How delicious. Welcome to the broadcast, my fruits. We have an announcement. We have an announcement from Buckingham Palace. 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Buckingham Palace is pleased to confirm that the Duke of Sussex will attend the coronation service at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of May. Wait for it. The Duchess of Sussex will remain in California with Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Isn't that interesting, my dears? How delicious. Isn't that interesting? And you know what? It seems that my whisperers were onto something, doesn't it? Do you remember? If you'd like to cast your minds back 1 month ago, well, it was more than a month ago, when you asked me to do some digging with my sources on the other side of the pond, see what I could find with regards to their attendance. And I came to you and I told you that it was my information, and it was only tittle-tattle, but it was my information that Harry would attend. Meghan, no. Meghan, no. That is what I told you. Now, I also told you that it was Harry's wish to bring Archie, to bring Prince Archie along with him. Possibly to deflect from some of the boos and hisses and soften the glare and the gaze, if you will. Well, it's since transpired that Harry was not ever to be included in any kind of procession, on any kind of parade, or on the balcony. Remember, we had confirmation of that only in the past week or two. Yes, we also haven't received any official information whether or not Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet were invited at all, and it is my understanding that they were not invited. Not to say that that couldn't have happened if the Duke and Duchess hadn't taken up Buckingham Palace on the offer together and then requested further invitations. As a second son, I'm sure that might have been possible, bearing their tender years into proceedings. Now, Lilibet has always really been too young for such an event, but I believe it would have been a fabulous opportunity for Prince Archie. What's he about to turn? Is it 4 years old? On the coronation. I believe it would have been a fabulous birthday gift for him if he was part of the loving embrace of his family this side of the pond. It would have been a fantastic celebration, because at 4 years old you are fully cognizant of what's going on. I've got a little one in my family coming up to 4 years old in 2 months' time, and he's very with it. He's at the age where memories will be sticking with him for some time now, and it'll be the same with Archie. It is an absolute travesty that this whole thing has transpired, that it's led to this absurdity, this absurd point in time where it would have been outrageous, A, if they did both attend after what they've been up to, and B, if they didn't both attend. Every conclusion is outrageous. You know, for the idea of Harry not attending his own father, the King's coronation, the first huge worldwide global event and an intimate Christian Anglican service, crowning his father, if he hadn't have attended, that would also be outrageous in its way. Not that I especially think he deserved his slot there, but considering all the possible outcomes that could have been, this ain't a bad one, is it there? Personally, I'm delighted that Meghan Markle will not be in attendance, although I think Harry is more to blame for everything that's happened, because it happened under his stewardship and his knowledge of how good his family are and how decent they generally are. He knows that, and he still wantonly and willingly walked into this disgrace, this unspeakable horror of a cabaret, a tawdry cabaret. That was on his watch, so I blame him so much more than Meghan Markle, but I am delighted she won't be there. I am delighted that although the shadow of her and what they've both done together will be cast over proceedings, because it will continue to be mentioned in the press at length, and there will continue to be a lot of narrative surrounding it. It is not the same as having her there. It is not the same as having every news story being photographs of her, pictures of her, whether or not she comes out with anything regarding Prince Archie's birthday on that very day. I hear that one of her unofficial spokespeople or lickspittles, who I don't actually believe is getting information from her or Harry, unlike other people, I don't believe this particular unofficial spokesman does. I think that he just pretends he does because he knows that it plays well. Or kind of insinuates that he is more involved than he is. My sources are better than his sources, as has just been proved. But these spokesmen say that Archie played a factor in the couple's decision. No. No. Can I get a rewind? No, my dear. No, he did not play a factor in the decision. This is the birthday party of a 4-year-old child, and you can have a birthday and a birthday party anywhere in the world. I mean, we hear that Harry will only be ducking in and out of the service itself, going wholly under the radar, hopefully, no doubt looking really shifty in his seat and playing with himself. And, whose hand am I going to hold? Whose hand am I going to hold? Catherine, dear? Watch where you put your fingers. Watch where you put your fingers, my dear. Catherine is livid with the pair of them, especially in the wake of despair. Tone, yes. Livid, my dear. No love lost there. But no doubt she'll act gracefully towards him, as she did at the late Philip's funeral, after he besmirched Philip in his dying days, as he lay there, fading away into the sunset. And those two were getting up to all kinds of mischief with Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about and the mind boggles, but that's what they did, you know? So let's not start playing this game. Let's not start playing that Mother of the Year wants to make sure that Archie at 4 years old has a fabulous birthday, because there would be no better gift and no better memory to have than seeing your grandfather crowned and having that memory for the rest of your life. Prince Archie is being deprived of that memory. Perhaps Princess Lilibet is too young, but to not be there during those celebrations, although it, as I say, there's a dichotomy at play, because it's very good that we won't have Meghan seen with Harry cluttering around, making a big fuss and ordering cakes and showing them on Instagram. In the kingdom, although that's good, it is still, I think, very sad for King Charles that he won't be around his grandchildren at that entirely unique moment in history. You know? Could be the last coronation we ever see if some get their way. I mean, I think that's very unlikely. I'm sure that William will come to the throne in 20 years or so. Who knows? Whether George will, if the appetite will be there for King George, we shall have to see, won't we? We shall have to see. But, you know, this is such a unique occasion, and it beggars belief, it truly does. Because remember, this whole coronation weekend that we've got coming up, a bank holiday weekend, will be filled with other celebrations. So for those members of the family, like who are at Princess Lilibet's sort of age group, if the coronation were to be too heavy and they were not to be invited because they are too tender of year, there are loads of other celebrations going on. There's music, there's a pop concert, you know, there's all kinds of things going to be happening over that week, as well as some private gatherings. So what an awful missed opportunity. And my early understanding at this stage is that there is and has been a lot of friction behind the scenes. A lot of friction between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex over this matter. And so much of it comes down to this insistence for atonement and an apology. And we've heard Harry go on about it, and he certainly is up there responsible for demanding, what was it he called it? Accountability, of course. Accountability. He wanted them to take ownership and accountability for it. But he certainly wasn't the only one. That was what Meghan wanted. It's what she wanted as well, from the moment that she stepped onto that tawdry cabaret, that Oprah Winfrey bazaar. It's what she wanted. And she didn't get it. And she didn't realise, my dear, that While they are beloved members of the family, recollections may vary. She don't realise they're prepared to wait the long game. That is why what happened with Kensington Palace and the statement that was rush released regarding Susan Hussey was, even though some say it might have worked in the interim because it was quick firefighting, it was totally unroyal. It was also unaristocratic. In our world, nothing is rushed, and even more importantly, nothing is seen to be rushed. It is absolutely not cricket. It's not done. Nancy Mitford wouldn't even use airmail, you know, last century. She wouldn't even use airmail to write to friends and correspondents abroad, because even though it would have got there 10 times quicker, she absolutely would not be seen to be hurrying. Really, really. And even in this age we live in now of emails and tweet this, there has to be a modicum of reserve, particularly the English reserve, and that's why just one of the reasons why Kensington Palace's response, in my opinion, was a disgrace. This also illustrates plainly what is rattling around inside the Duke of Sussex's head, that vacancy. Because he's had to eat a great big whole dose of humble pie, hasn't he? Demanding apologies and retribution for his poor, poor scorned wife. You didn't get an apology, Harry, so why don't you stick to your guns and stay with your wife and children for Archibald's birthday? Why don't you do that, my dear? Nobody's forcing you here. But we all know what is forcing him here. Is it some innate sense of duty and service, and that he knows how outrageous it would be for him not to attend his father's coronation? Could it be that? Or is he so gone with Stockholm syndromes and all kinds of other issues? Is he so gone that that means nothing to him at all anymore? Or could it possibly be that he realises without the royal attachment, what's he going to trade off of? His wife's got the TikTok round the corner, so that's on the way for those various kind of merchants. But he likes the kudos. This is the thing. He might reject his tag as despair and tell us about his despair, but he actually loves it. He relishes it. He loves rubbing along shoulders with trashy celebrities. The James Cordens of this world, so chummy. The Colberts, anybody can rub shoulders with to spread his hint of stardust, because he's jealous of William, because he's jealous of the Prince of Wales, will never be the Prince of Wales, will never be King Henry IX, and will have to swallow his pride in a few more years' time to watch the crowning of King William V. Hold on to your hats. Will you be staying at home for Archie's 25th birthday then? What will be your excuse then, my dear? He knows, and he's always knew, that he would have to attend that coronation. Anxiety issues or not. So, I'm afraid he fell flat on his face with his emotional blackmail, my personal opinion. His emotional blackmail, his threats. This is the way it was perceived by me. I'm not suggesting for legal reasons that he did threat or use emotional blackmail. Everything I say in this video, for legal reasons, is simply my own opinion based on the whispers I've heard, the gossip, the tittle-tattle. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm entitled to an opinion, and so are you. So if you agree or disagree, you can let me know, but it is what it is. She's not coming. Catherine can breathe a sigh of relief, as can her husband, as can everybody involved. Harry is a headache too, but he is their flesh and blood. after the statement was given to the press by Buckingham Palace, there followed the sound of a bugle over the pond from the Montecito bugler, because Archewell followed it up with a near identical statement to the Press Association. Why? Why? You know, I'm sure it was agreed to release in tandem, perhaps, but why is it necessary? Buckingham Palace had already announced it. It doesn't require further clarification from Murchewell. Nobody of note is looking at that godforsaken website. Nobody of note. Only trolley, Twitter fixators. Those who are truly insensible. The insensible, the infirm, the mentally infirm, the incapacitated, the disenfranchised, the crushed, the desperate. And one had incredible amount of sympathy for all those kind of disillusioned, insensible souls who are Fruit Loops, fruitcakes, however you want to put it, my dear. I speak baldly here. Fruitcakes, Fruit Loops, got something missing. And some of them aren't that way. Some of them have been fed this narrative over the last few years coming up. Fed all these weird, strange, biased narratives. They don't have a healthy overview of the world. And white people are all supremacists and racists and all harbour unconscious bias, and none of them are allowed to speak on certain issues or have opinions about black people or black countries. And the empire was all bad with no good, and I wonder where most of these people that can't shut their traps would actually be right now if it weren't for the British Empire. And if they really looked into it, they'd probably find that they either wouldn't exist in the first place now, might be speaking Spanish or Dutch or Portuguese or some kind of Outer Mongolian in societies that did not abolish slavery, other societies, various societies that were not one of the first and premier nations to abolish slavery, as we did. You know, the kind of people that follow them, the kind of talking heads that pop up as little vox pops on their Netflix documentary, very meticulously, cautiously selected to echo their world views. They have no finesse, these people, no finesse. Some of them do have the ability to be quite switched on, can be very savvy, can be clever in certain ways, but they miss finesse, they miss flair and panache and the well-roundedness that comes with somebody who isn't hell-bent on following a polarised polemic. Love My Lido says, you featured a handful of Victorias on the broadcast when we were talking about royal family orders, but I've wondered why the modern royals don't seem to favour that name anymore when it comes to naming their daughters. Do you have any idea? This Victoria is just curious. Cheers from California. Thank you, Victoria, my dear, my Victoria sponge pudding. Well, yes, you're right. There hasn't been much mention of Victoria over the past few decades, but you have to remember that the late Queen Elizabeth was around for a very long time, wasn't she? A very long time, 70 years a queen, and many more as a princess, little thing coming through. And so, you know, the tradition really is to plump for the reigning monarch, the family member that you're close to and that you know. And the name Elizabeth appears in the names of Zara, you know, as middle names. Sometimes the only one, but usually there's a few names there. But all of these have Elizabeth in their names. Zara Tyndall, Princess Charlotte, Princess Lilibet, Lady Louise, Lena Tyndall, Princess Beatrice, little Sienna, Apolli Mozzi, and Isla Phillips. They're just a few that have got Elizabeth within their name. No Victoria is mentioned there, apart from, usually, interesting, after Beatrice, Elizabeth came usually Victoria. And I think that is, it's known, isn't it, that I think Sarah Ferguson has a particular interest in Victoriana, and as we know, that was passed on to Beatrice, who has a look of Victoria and also is inspired by clothing and the wardrobe from that era a lot. And she played Victoria, didn't she, on screen once in a movie. She played the young Victoria at one point, which is rather marvellous, I thought. So yes, it doesn't appear very much. I think as well as the fact that they were honouring Elizabeth and putting the name of two queens would be a little bit obtuse or not quite right. You also have to remember that Victoriana in general, especially towards the latter half of the last century, was incredibly unfashionable because, it was such a stolid era, the Victorian age with its social mores, its devout, pious, puritanical sort of leanings. It was incongruent and jarring with the rock and roll 50s, the swinging 60s, the disco 70s, the power hungry 80s, what were the 90s? Raving 90s and beyond. So that was also, remember that a lot of names, and yes, royal family members would normally go for traditionally long-standing names, and a lot of the names that they use still, like Beatrice, for example, are names that surrounded Victoria. Louise, there were so many children that she had, so many names that inspired today's names. But old-fashioned names were out of fashion for a very long time. It's only really been, I'm talking about last century, towards the end of last century. It's only really been in the last decade, 2 decades, when you've seen all those old-fashioned names emerge, haven't you? Around and become desirable again. But yes, it's funny how names come and go, isn't it? In and out of vogue. And Victoria, I'm sure there's lots of Victorias watching, or Vicky's. One of my greatest friends is called Victoria, and she's stubbornly Victoria. She will not bear to be called Vicky. Vicky actually sounds more glamorous in America. It puts me in mind, Judy Garland played the role of a young Vicky. It puts me in mind of younger Hollywood starlets called Vicky of the era, particularly sometimes spelt with an I. Over here, it became, sorry to say, my dears, but rather common, in the wake of Victoria. And I suppose Elizabeth, Vicky and Liz. Neither of them over here sound especially glamorous, whereas I think Elizabeth is a beautiful name and Victoria is a splendid name too. So I'm sure the time will come around when they come back into vogue because they had the classical element. And let's also remember, for those of you that don't know, that Victoria was Queen Victoria's regnal name, but not her birth name. Queen Victoria's name was Alexandrina. How fabulous would that be, to have a little Alexandrina? But she preferred to be known as either Victoria as she grew older, but particularly and especially Drina. Just Gina was her pet name, little Gina. So even Queen Victoria wasn't really called Victoria. A new emoji has been released. A design based on the St. Edward's crown, which is the centrepiece that Charles will wear at the moment of crowning. Yes, for those of you that don't know, the crowning does not simply involve one crown. Well, rather it does. The St. Edward's crown is what he is going to be crowned with, but after that will be the imperial state crown. There might be some others appearing, I'm not quite sure. But for the procession, he will be wearing the imperial state crown, which was only created maybe 100 years ago, sometime last century. But the St. Edward's crown dates back an awful long way. Not as far back as the monarchy, because all the medieval original crown jewels and crowns, this kind of thing, were melted down because the monarchy was abolished and the king was sent into exile and everything was melted down rather tragically. But after 11 years of republicanism, as we've spoken of before, they needed a new crown, and so the St. Edward's crown was drummed up. It was named after Edward the Confessor, who was considered the last English king of the House of Wessex, and he was later canonised by the Pope, hence St. Edward's crown. It's regarded as the official coronation crown, but only 6 monarchs actually have been crowned with this crown since the Restoration period. The crown features a purple velvet cap trimmed with ermine. There are 444 precious and semi-precious stones, including rubies, amethysts, white topazes, sapphires, tourmalines and aquamarines, and it's 22 carat solid gold weighing 2.23 kilograms. Lovely. I'll have a bit of that, won't I? And this new emoji will appear on, or is appearing rather, on Twitter, for the twits of Twitter, when various coronation hashtags are employed. The Duchess of Edinburgh was in Portsmouth enjoying a tour of HMS Daring in her role as a sponsor. HMS Daring is in the dry dock at His Majesty's Naval Base in Portsmouth, and it's undergoing maintenance and renovation. And Sophie watched a presentation on the refit and regeneration programme and completed a tour of the vessel. She was in full protective gear, did you see? Overalls, safety glasses, a helmet and gloves and all kinds of things. But underneath that she was in a lovely cream, sort of silk and beige affair with a gold brooch. Actually, pale camel is the colour shade of that blazer that you see. It's by one of her favourites, Me and M, and it's an Italian wool military button blazer. The earrings are her changing Berlins, with a black silver central element casted from a mould of an original cut steel brooch from the Victorian period. Well, come and join me in the next broadcast, my dears. I look forward to seeing you then. Leave me a nice juicy comment, and if you enjoyed the show, consider sending a tip to my privy purse, which is in the description box, and I thank you most sincerely. I will see you next time, my dears. I'm going to magic myself out of here. So until next time, my dears, I am off to the clouds with Mary Poppins, and I will see you in the next broadcast. Toodle pip!